Yes, thank you very much for inviting me all the way from down south to come and speak to you on behalf of the Sentencing Academy. We are very pleased to support this event as we did its predecessor in late 2023. Obviously, quite a lot has happened since then, some of which we've discussed today and more of which I imagine might come up in the question and answer session. For anyone who doesn't know, the Sentencing Academy is a research and engagement charity. And as has been trailed, we look at how to enhance research-based approaches to sentencing policy that reduces reoffending, enacts better justice for victims, also enhances public confidence. So all of the notes I think the speakers have hit today. I think we were described earlier as London-based. I must say that I think my colleagues based in Leicester and Oxford would be appalled by that description, but we will cop to being an England and Wales-based charity. So I hope I can be forgiven if some of my thoughts now do start from that position. My colleague who undertook this role at the previous version of the Symposium, Professor Gavin Ding, Scottish himself to get around that, but I'm afraid I'm not able to emulate that. So my role at the Sentencing Academy is that I'm the Director of External Relations, which, as some of you will no doubt be thinking, means I do the grubby stuff. So I talk to not only members of our esteemed media, who haven't fared terribly well in some of the discussions today, but also I speak directly to politicians and the political actors that we hope will be making a big difference to sentencing policy in England and Wales over the next few months. And before I joined the Sentencing Academy, which was in December last year, I was the policy advisor to the current Lord Chancellor, Shabana Mahmood. So I went to work for her when she first undertook the shadow role. So that was in November 2023. And then I went into government for a short period to take some of the policy development work from the manifesto and convert it into real-world policy at the Ministry of Justice. Before being released on licence to the supervision of my colleagues at the Sentencing Academy. So in that role, I developed the independent sentencing review that's been mentioned today, that's being chaired by David Gauke. That was, interestingly, a political product. It was in the now government's manifesto, so it wasn't something that was devised by the civil service, although obviously they were very aware of the need and really impressed that upon us. To manage the unsustainable prison population by undertaking a comprehensive review of sentencing. It is such a salient conversation, certainly in England and Wales, and I understand here as well, that it was genuinely part of the political debate going into the election, which I think tells us something. You won't be surprised to know that if you work in politics, conversations about criminal justice can lack something in the way of nuance. That's particularly true if you're working for what is the opposition party, as I was for most of my time. And that is not just on what's been described today as the get tough side of the fence, but actually also on the almost prison abolitionist side of the fence. And we did, of course, have people approaching us in that capacity who felt that prison should be a thing of the past more or less altogether, that building new prisons was a mistake. So it's been a real treat to be back today in the land of nuance. That was my previous world before I went to work in politics, in legal bodies and the charity sector. And we've had a series of really nuanced and interesting presentations today. And I don't wish to mismanage expectations and say that I can offer an exhaustive summary, and it would be invidious to pick out highlights. But like all of you, I've written copious notes on things I want to go away and read more about, look into in more detail. I've been, I think, particularly pleased to hear about some of the work that's being done around acknowledging that public perceptions are not stable. They shift. We've heard, actually, that there has been perhaps quite a worrying development whereby the public seem to be more inclined now to believe that sentences are too lenient than was the case a short time ago. We've also heard about differences in the deterrent effect of prison. That might seem intuitive that different offenders respond to prison in different ways, but I think hearing that the research really supports that is important. And then, of course, we've delved into some particular offence types. I thought the domestic abuse presentation was fascinating from that point of view, that acknowledgement of tensions, even at a time when it really seems as though there's a renewed sense of concern. It hasn't been taken as seriously in the past as it should have been. That doesn't mean that we now have consensus on what are the right nuances now, what are the right mitigating and aggravating factors, and so on. We've also heard about the work of the Risk Management Authority. Now, there is obviously no direct equivalent in England and Wales, so I found that particularly fascinating. And the complexity around those trajectories, in particular, is something I'd like to go away and look into in much more detail. I do just want to, if nobody will mind, say how very pleased we are as a Sentencing Academy to be supporting a piece of research that everyone can agree on, given how rare that is. And that's Dr. Rory Kelly's work on the importance of clear language in sentencing. So nods all around the room, because that piece of research, not only does it really contribute to everybody's interests within the criminal justice system, but, and this is not a joke, this is a serious point, it doesn't cost anything to get that language right. And perhaps for that reason, I'm really pleased to be able to say that in our conversations with ministers in the Ministry of Justice down in Westminster, their interest in that project is very acute, and they are, no pressure, Rory, very, very keen to see the results. I'll use the opportunity there just because I can't resist to add something from my own experience. I won't comment on the headless chicken analogy in respect of politicians. It's best if I don't. But on a serious note, I would like to just push back slightly against the notion that when policymakers make frustrating decisions, it is because they are simply responding to where they think public opinion is. Of course, there is an element of that. They are elected. But there are also a number of other considerations that I think it's really important that all of us working in this field take into account. We just had a very developed presentation about risk. I think politicians take risk incredibly seriously because, to state the obvious, they have direct relationships with the victims of crime who come to see them, the general public who are worried about crime and whether or not they are safe in their constituencies. So where they seem to be behaving in a really risk-averse way, I think there is a very good and genuine reason for that. And then the second point, which I've already touched upon, is they are very aware of their role as custodians of the public purse. So there are opportunities in both of those areas where the evidence shows that we can manage risk better and sentence more effectively, and also stop wasting public money on things that don't work. That's a really important opportunity, and the more data, the more evidence we have on that, the better. We're in a particularly important moment down in England and Wales with the Gork review and then the legislation due to come in pretty much any minute now. We expect it in the next few weeks, but I know you've also had a moment of significant change up here in Scotland. I think my overall reflection is if we have the right evidence on the right things, we can really do wonderful things in justice, things that benefit everybody and make all of us feel as though we've made a significant contribution to our world. And on that note, I'd like to thank you again, all of you, for being here, and hope to work with you again.